Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paperweights. I'm your host, Brandon.
And I'm Emily.
And this is the final episode of the Harry Potters. I made it. Thanks to everybody that came along, especially Emily for the finale book. So, hey, my little microphone makes an appearance. So first of all, we are sponsored by Mudcat Whiskers, a beard care product company based out of Youngsville, Louisiana. So it's a local company for us. And they sell beard care products, which include shampoo, conditioner, balm, butter, and oil. And they also sell candles, soy candles with a wood wick. And the candles come in all the scents that the beard care products come in. So if you're in the market for any of those, head on over to mudcatwhiskers.com and use code Paperweights at checkout to save yourself some money and support a local business to us, a small business for you, and support the podcast that you enjoy listening to. Or you don't enjoy listening to and you're just masochistic and you do it anyway. So this week, not related to Harry Potter, Jules and I have started playing Kingdom Hearts 1.
Ooh, good one.
So, thing is, I played a lot of that. I never beat it, and I only played the first one. And it wasn't until like 11, 12 years ago that I played it first. On a whim, I just went and bought myself a used obviously used, an old PS2 and Kingdom Hearts so I could play it. And I think I played like 60-70% of the game and then just kind of stopped for whatever reason. I think I stopped because Jules was born and we repurposed the room that had all of my stuff in it. And that became the nursery room. So the PS2 went into storage and the baby went into the room. So I saw it was an entire collection. It was like 1.5 plus 2.5 HD remix or something on Steam. It has like 6 different games, but some of them aren't the games. They're just the cutscenes from certain things, but there's 6 of them in that package. And it was bundled with Kingdom Hearts 3, so I have the entire Kingdom Hearts collection. So we started playing that, and she learns quickly. Like, she likes video games, but most of the time she's been watching people play video games, and I haven't been the best at being a dad with video games just because I know I got addicted to them, and so I'm wary of her just spending all of her time. But now I'm like, you know what? If she's building her hand-eye coordination, her puzzle solving, problem solving, it's better than her just sitting on a couch watching other people do these things and her not actually doing anything, just visual stimulation incoming 100, the whole time. So
yeah, well, I will say of those, Kingdom Hearts 2 was my personal favorite. That one just seemed, it was a lot more fun to me than the first or even the third one. So for me, 2 is my favorite.
okay, yeah, we're excited to get through it.
Yeah.
So all right, anything you're up to in your life?
I have a midterm to do today for grad school, but other than that.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
So we shall jump into chapter 31 so that we can we can have this awesome conversation, and then you can go do excellent on your midterm.
Thank you.
So, chapter 31 begins the Battle of Hogwarts. So, at the end of the last section, we saw them oust Snape, and he just I can't do the sound as well. Dustin can make the bat going sound just flying away really well. He does it every Thursday night at D&D. But Snape got away like a bat. And the Battle of Hogwarts, which Harry just really insisted that he wasn't here to stay at Hogwarts. But little did he know that Rowling had other plans for him. He spends the rest of the book at Hogwarts.
Yes, it's and one of the things I like about this, I find funny about this one, the chapter of this one is the Battle of Hogwarts. We don't see much of it this chapter. We see a lot of preparation.
My AirPods disconnected again. All right, I should be able to hear you now.
Okay, so the title of this one is the Battle of Hogwarts, but in this chapter we actually don't see too much of the battle. We see a lot of the preparation.
Right. And so I think, well, towards the end, we do see like the others are battling. Like,
yes, we see a little bit at the end, but it's like most of it is the build up in this chapter, which you would think we've had 30 chapters of build up to this and we get a little bit more.
Yeah. In it is interesting here. Whenever I think, and I've only watched the last two movies once, and whenever I think about it, I always think about mostly the scene with in Hogwarts where Voldemort is with the students and beckoning some to his side, like Draco, come over here, and then hugging him awkwardly. So
even the actor said that was one of the most awkward things on the planet.
Yeah, and so I think sorry, I have more images of the actual battle from the movie in my head, and when I reread this in the book, I was like, we don't actually see a whole lot of it because Harry, like we're following Harry, and Harry's not in the battle himself. Like Harry doesn't do much fighting.
No.
In this book himself.
We see Harry's journey. We see we do get like a montage of things that have happened, and it's made, unfortunately, in the movie, it's a montage of people who are dying.
Yes. And we saw that here, like it just when he returns, and I guess I'll tackle it out. When he returns from the dead, and he's walking or not, he's not walking, he's being carried by Hagrid. He's seeing all these people that have died, and like that's how we learn that they died. We don't even get to see them go out in a blaze of glory and die.
Yeah, we get one, and we'll talk about more of that because that was in my reread, that was a bit of a traumatic bit for me. Like I knew it was coming. It still made me incredibly sad. But we're not at that point yet.
Yeah. And so far in the book, I think the really the only one that we saw was Dobby, right?
And Hedwig.
Like, and Hedwig.
We see Hedwig's.
Yeah, we do
hear about Moonies. We hear about Ted Tonks.
Yeah, we hear about all those.
Oh no, we see the previous Muggle studies teacher, Charity Burbage.
Yeah, but we never had
We're not connected to her.
And I didn't have that connection with Hedwig either. But
see, I did.
And I guess if it's my pet, I'm connected to it, but unless I stop and think, and I had to stop and think, you pointed it out, like Hedwig is his pet, and even for more than a pet, like there's a magical bond between the owls and humans, they're not just a normal owl.
Yeah.
And so, once that happened, then I was like, okay, I understand why that was such a heartbreaking moment. But like Dobby dying on screen, that's more of, oh crap, okay, nobody's invincible.
Yes.
So
And it's so yeah, we've seen a fair bit of death up to this point, or there's been a fair bit of death up to this point, and unfortunately, it doesn't get lighter.
yeah. So in this chapter, Harry goes off and he asks, so he gets the idea from running into Nearly Headless Nick, and he says, "Where would I find the Ravenclaw ghost, or who is the Ravenclaw ghost?" And so he goes and asks her, like, "Where's the diadem?" And during this conversation, he finds out that she is the ghost. The ghost is the daughter of Ravenclaw.
Yes.
And I think
She
she's
is
also named
when
after
she
her.
lived, she was Helena Ravenclaw. And Harry is realizing that that he is not the first person that she told this information to. Because he says that even as a ghost, she pales and like she gets noticeably nervous as a ghost as he's asking this information from her. And all this time, there's so much chaos going on around him. Like they're trying to get all the students out of the school. They're trying to get the order into the school. They're trying to put up as much defenses as they can and buy as much time as they can. And Harry's having to chase down the Gray Lady to find all this information out. But she eventually tells him her tale of woe and how she wound up as a ghost of Hogwarts. And you don't I feel like in a lot of the series, like we see the ghosts, but we don't really like get their backstory. So I feel like this is one of the big first backstories we get of some of the Hogwarts ghosts.
I think like Nearly Headless Nick, we get a lot of like we understand more of him.
Yes, because
Like,
he's the Gryffindor ghost, and our main characters aren't Gryffindor.
right.
But now we're understanding the Ravenclaw ghost, and we understand the Slytherin ghost.
Explain.
So the Bloody Baron, the
Oh
man who
yeah,
kills her, is the Slytherin house ghost.
that's right. I forgot about that.
So they are, and she even says like he wears his chains as an act of penitence. And she goes, as he should. And I'm like, how terrible would it be to not only be stuck in your mother's shadow as a ghost to the point where your own name is even lost? You're just called the Gray Lady. And you're having to spend eternity with the ghost of the man who killed you.
That feels
Like
really wrong.
yeah, it like you think about this and you're like, oh wow, that's like, why'd that like Rowling, why'd you do that?
Yeah, like you get to spend eternity with the person that killed you.
Yes. But
Okay.
he is able to finally talk to the ghost of Helena Ravenclaw, and she finds out where she had hidden it, and that's when Harry finally realizes the connection to Albania and why he went to Albania. And he eventually realizes that he knows where the diadem is, and not only does he know where it is, he's picked it up before.
Yeah, that was a funny realization.
Yes.
He's like, wait, no, and he even recalls the exact gargoyles. Like the third on the left is the one where I did, and I put a wig on it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he put a wig on it, but there was a wig on it, and he's like, oh, I know exactly where that is.
Yep. So he realizes that Voldemort must have placed the diadem in the room of lost things when he came to ask Dumbledore for a job, either on the way up to Dumbledore's office or the way down. He must have just snuck in and hid it in there, thinking that he would get a job and be back to guard it.
Yeah, and so this room of requirement, we're now learning it's not it has multiple states, like probably infinite number of states based on who is calling it. So, if you call it for one reason and somebody else calls it for another reason, it's going to have something different in it. But I also get kind of a sense that if somebody's in it, it's not going to appear in a different state for other people.
That is correct. So while it has many appearances, it is one room. So as long as somebody is in there using the room for a purpose, it will not appear for a different purpose for another person. That's why they make Jenny get out of the room. So that way they can go in and use it in its state as the room of lost things. So they're able to go in, and Harry's like, he knows where it is, but he's not exactly sure where in the room that was. And so he gets them to the general area, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione all kind of split off to go try to look for it. And then Crabbe, Goyle, and Malfoy all show up.
So there's something that happened, and I can't, so Voldemort, so this section, first of all, did you ever see the movie Stephen King's Storm of the Century?
No.
Okay. So in that movie, right at the beginning, a mysterious man shows up on this island. It's set on an island in Maine. And
most of his are set in Maine.
Yeah. And a big storm's coming that's going to prevent travel to and from the island. So there are people getting off the island. But one mysterious stranger of a man shows up, knocks on the door of an old lady's house, says some weird thing, and she's like, huh? And then kills the lady. And this happens like in the first 5 minutes of the movie. So it's not a spoiler, but the constable comes, takes him away, and like the guy keeps saying, give me what I want and I'll go away. He's like, what do you want? He goes, when the time is right, we're going to talk about it. Voldemort here, and I correct me if I am wrong here, but Voldemort stops the fighting, correct? And says, I'm giving Harry until midnight. I'm going to cease the fighting, and Harry has until midnight.
So you're combining the two. So at first he says that he will give them until midnight to give him Harry Potter. And that's when they're all in the entrance hall and McGonagall's trying to evacuate them. That's
Okay.
when Pansy Parkinson says, well, he's right there. Let's just give him to him. And McGonagall's like, okay, Slytherins, you can all go. Pansy, you can lead them out. And so that's the first sort of time he gives Harry to appear. Then the battle commences, and after a while, and I think they say it's a couple hours before dawn, that he makes the other announcement. It's right after he kills Snape that he will pause the fighting for an hour, bury your dead with dignity, heal your wounded, and Harry Potter has 1 hour to come to me in the Forbidden Forest, or the fighting will commence. So yeah, he does it twice.
Okay, gotcha. And that's why I got confused, because it seemed like almost the same thing. But this scene right here in chapter 31, where he's like, give me Harry Potter and I'll leave the school untouched. It just reminded me so much of Storm of the Century, because it's like, give me what I want and I'll go away. It's like, but in this case, he definitely tells, unlike the character in Storm of the Century who doesn't tell them what he wants yet.
Voldemort is very clear on what he wants. I will say he's not ambiguous.
Yeah, he's like, give me Harry Potter.
Yes.
And so yeah, Crabbe and Goyle show up, right?
Yes.
They're in the room of requirement already, and Crabbe and Goyle show up in there, and Malfoy.
Yes, and we're very quickly seeing that it's not just Lucius Malfoy who has lost all favor with everyone. It's because the first 6 books you see Crabbe and Goyle as being Draco's lackeys. Like he is definitely the ringleader of the two of them. He is like the one in charge. And in this case, they're not listening to him. I believe, I don't remember if it's Crabbe or Goyle, but one of them literally tells him like, "You're just as much of a disgrace as your father. Like we're not listening to you anymore."
Yeah, I think he also said your father's just done.
Yeah. So we have Crabbe and Goyle are no longer listening to Malfoy, and Malfoy is the one who's trying to be like, "Hey, don't kill him." And they're like, if we kill him accidentally, what's the matter with it? And Malfoy is being like, "No, you don't understand what will happen to you if you kill him."
Oh, we forgot. We forgot to mention that before they go in there, like, so Harry has been wondering where Ron and Hermione were.
That's right. Oh, I forgot that was this chapter.
And so he was like, "Where's Ron and Hermione?" Right before he goes into the room of requirement, they show up and they've got like, it's almost like that meme of the guy that's holding things and he's like, "I can't hold all these things." And they have like all of these giant basilisk fangs that are just like spilling out of their arms.
Which
Um,
that doesn't seem like a safe way to carry basilisk fangs.
Also, how is the body of the basilisk? I mean, I guess the fangs are like teeth, so they're not gonna degrade. But I think they stated the body of the basilisk was still sitting in there, bloody, in the Chamber of Secrets.
I don't think I don't think the body was still there because I mean, this is sort of just how it's depicted in the movie. This is how I always envisioned it. It was just like the skeleton.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And so like it's the skeleton, they're able to pull the the teeth from the skull, or I don't know if they pull or I think it's like they slice them out. Like I think Harry notices that they've like cut them out somehow, probably with some sort of spell. But they they're both carrying armfuls of basilisk fangs. Like there's not only 2 more Horcruxes to get rid of.
Right, and they also, we find out they destroyed the cup.
Yes, they
So we
let
have a
Hermione destroy the cup because she hadn't had the pleasure of doing a Horcrux destruction yet.
yeah, and we all that happens out off screen.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to see like Hermione being like menacingly like stabbing the cup. So
So
then,
we do catch up with them right before Harry goes into the room of requirement with their arms full of basilisk fangs.
and then all three of them enter in to the room of requirement.
Yes.
And so now we can fast forward to meeting up with Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. Malfoy is obviously not the ringleader anymore, and Goyle, no, Crabbe is like just like knocking stuff over, just
Yeah.
willy-nilly casting spells. And all of a sudden, like the room starts to get warmer and there's like fire that's running through
Yes.
the stacks of stuff.
Yes. And I do feel like I try not to compare the book to the movie a lot, but I do feel like they do this scene fairly well in the movie of how quickly the fiend fire spreads, how devastating it is, and how impossible it is to control. So I feel like that they do a good description of this scene in the movie.
Yeah, but this is the first time I remember hearing of this spell.
So it really is, I think, one of the first times we hear of this spell. But Hermione does later explain it as one of the things that can destroy a Horcrux. Like she obviously had read about it in one of the books.
She mentioned that before?
No, she mentions it right after this scene.
Okay, yeah.
And so she's like, "Oh no, I read it in one of the books on Horcruxes. This is one of the things that can destroy them, but it's so impossible to control. I would never like cast it."
Yeah, it reminds me, so sorry, making a note. It reminds me almost like in Wheel of Time, there's this spell called Balefire, and it's a spell from a weave, as they, if you will, in the world of Wheel of Time. It's a legendary. It's a weave from the Age of Legends, and it's forbidden because it unravels stuff, and it's very dangerous for the web of life. So like the web of existence. Um, and so she could have I don't think she thought of this before introducing it. I think Fiend Fire was a spell that was created out of a need for, I need to quickly destroy another hot Horcrux. Um, but she could have set up Fiend Fire as one of these, I mean, unforgivable curses, or dangerous curses, where it's like, oh no, that is extremely dangerous. Almost like napalm. Like, oh, you don't want to go near that. That's not gonna it's not gonna get put out. It's gonna spread extremely quickly. So, have build that fear up in anybody. And then anytime the fires come, you're like, the audience is like, is that fiend fire or is that regular fire? Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? It's kind of scary here.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
mean, I
even
agree. It was a device she deployed very late, but and we get the briefest description that it is this incredibly dark magic, because someone points out that they must have learned it from the Caros, who we know were horribly dark wizards teaching all kinds of very forbidden magic. And then even Hermione's like, no, I would never consider casting this spell. It's too powerful. It's too dark. And obviously she learns of its existence from one of the books on Horcruxes that Dumbledore pulled from the library and hid because the magic was too dark.
Yeah, and the Caros, one of them was in charge of Defense Against the Dark Arts, or as they renamed it for
The dark
year
arts.
7, the Dark Arts. Like, we're gonna teach you the Dark Arts.
Yes, I mean we get, it is a very brief explanation, but we do get the gist that it's a very dark form of magic.
Yes.
And they even joke at the end, they're like, too bad he wasn't paying attention when they told him how to put it out.
Yeah, so they're running for their lives. Like, Ron is running away from Crabbe, who started the fire.
Yes.
Goyle gets knocked out, right?
Yeah,
Stunned.
Goyle gets knocked out. Malfoy's trying to stay with Goyle, or trying to like move Goyle.
And Harry goes to help, and it was Hermione that reluctantly helped Harry and Malfoy with Goyle, right?
A little bit. I think so it's a very chaotic scene. So they're all trying to escape the fire. I think even Crabbe realizes, oh no, what have I done? Because he can't turn it off.
He pays for it though.
He does. So he gets the trio wind up trapped. Like, at first they're trying to help Malfoy a little bit, and then they wind up going their separate ways. The trio gets sort of trapped in an area that they can't escape from the fire. And Harry, of course, magically finds these 2 broomsticks, and they jump one and fly over the fire. And Harry sees Malfoy and an unconscious Crabbe an unconscious Goyle on top of like this burning pile of desks. Like, they're gonna die if they don't intervene. And Harry, being the good-hearted Gryffindor that he is like, we can't leave him. Like, we have to save him. And Ron's like, if we die trying to save these 2, I'm never gonna forgive you. So they miss, actually, the first time they're trying to grab him, because Harry can't pull Malfoy and Goyle up at the same time. So they get back around. Harry gets Malfoy on his broomstick, and Ron and Hermione get Goyle on their broomstick, which does sort of make me realize, what are the limits to carrying on a broomstick? Like, because they're saying that like Harry couldn't pull up Goyle and Malfoy, but the broom that has 2 other people already on it is able to grab Goyle. So I'm like, what are the What are the weight limits on a broomstick?
Yeah, it's crazy. I also like in this chapter, and I'm pretty sure it's this chapter. Again, I get so many different things mixed up. It's just me. So if you're listening and you notice it, you just got to deal with it. I do my best, whatever. But the broomsticks, I think this really, I was reminded of Harry's ability as a seeker, flying around, finding things, dipping down, pulling things out um, in this. And I think it was kind of neat that the last time we see Harry on a broomstick, he's he's seeking Malfoy, who has been his, like, not his arch enemy necessarily, but his antagonist at Hogwarts for the entire series.
Yes.
And he grabs him to safety, along with his former lackey, and gets them out. So I think it was a really nice way to just like throw in a kind of a reminder to how good Harry is on a broomstick.
Yeah. Yep, he's very talented in the air, and he's even able, as they're escaping from a collapsing tower of things, to find the diadem on his way out the door and hook it through his arm and get out the door.
Yep.
So they crash outside of the room requirement. Actually, I think it's Malfoy who like helps him find the door, because for a while they're just flying around trying to find the door, and Malfoy's like, "No, it's like go find the door. It's that way." And so, in a way,
And Malfoy was intimately familiar with this room because
yes,
in book 6, he went in there all the time because that's where the cabinet was.
yes. So Malfoy very quickly was able to like pinpoint where he was in the room and find and get them to the door, which ultimately saved all of their lives. They crash outside, like literally it seemed like they say that they crash into the wall outside of the room of requirement, and they're making sure everybody's okay. Malfoy's asking about Crabbe, and Ron's just like, he dead. He is dead.
Yeah, and whenever he said that, I like went back and I was like, where did it point out? Because the last I saw him, he was running after Ron, and then get outside the room. It's like, oh no, Crab's dead. It's like, okay, maybe his big self couldn't outrun the fiend fire and just got consumed by it.
Yes. So we find out Crab's dead. They're all sort of trying to recover after escaping the fiend fire, and the enchantments on the room of requirement seem to be strong enough to contain the fiend fire to that room.
Which is
So it's
thankful, very thankful.
yes. So they're safe from the fiend fire, at least. And then we get, for me, the most heartbreaking moment in the entire book. We see they're recovering, and they see Percy and Fred come around the corner, and they're fighting, they're joking around with each other, and Fred is actually laughing that Percy just made an actual joke. Because they're battling Pious Thicknees, and Percy flings a curse at him and says, "In case you're wondering, like, this is my resignation." And Fred's like, "You actually just made a joke. Like, I can't believe it." And then an explosion happens, and Fred's sentence is cut off. And we see at the very end of this chapter that the wall has collapsed on top of Fred. And when I was listening to this chapter in my car, I cut off my car right as they said Fred and Percy rounded the corner. And I was like, no, I know exactly what's going to happen when I turn my car back on. So to me, that is one of the most heartbreaking moments. We see Ron and Percy be immediately devastated. They're like trying to protect his body. Percy won't let him go. And everyone's just screaming and crying. Eventually, Hermione and Harry, and this is moving us into the next chapter. But Hermione and Harry eventually are able to convince them that we have to go. There's nothing more we can do for him. We have to get to safety.
And Ron's like, bullshit. I am joining this fight. I am going to go fight Death Eaters. I'm going to kill a lot of people. And Harry's like, no, you got to come help me.
Yes, and Hermione is trying to be like, Ron, I get it. I understand. I know what you're saying, but we've got to think clearly. And Percy will not let Fred's body go. Because remember, Percy just got his family back like 2 chapters ago.
Yeah.
And so eventually Percy realizes what needs to happen. So Harry and Percy hide Fred's body as best they can to prevent anything from happening to it. And they continue to go off into the fight. To me, Fred's death was more devastating than Dobby's. It was definitely more devastating to me than Mooney. But the first time I read it, I remember just crying. I was so sad.
Yeah, I don't think I've cried in a book. I may have, like, I know I felt something when I watched it in the movie. Again, it's been what, 11, 12 years since that movie came out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like 2011, so 13 years.
Yeah. So that's the last time I watched that scene. But and there is a scene. So the most emotions I've had from reading a book was in a Brandon Sanderson book where the hero just did something amazing, and like this hero is tragic and just like he has ups, and then you're like, yay, he's up here, and then something happens where it just dips right back down. Well, he did something amazing and then did something incredibly stupid right after. And I literally set the book down for a second and yelled out wherever I was. I think I was at home or something. Nobody was around, but I was like, what the hell are you doing? And yeah, that was a very frustrating time. So but yeah, this was like very sad, like Fred dying, because you think Fred and George, they're the comedic relief, and not in a Jar Jar Binks type way.
No.
In a very lovable, like, okay, yeah, we really do like these guys. And to have one die on you, because it seems that they're almost like untouchable.
Yes, but I mean, you think about it as an adult and you're like, you sort of knew that one of the Weasleys, they couldn't escape completely unscathed. So you spend a lot of time thinking, you're like, okay, a war's coming. There's no way that every single Weasley is going to make it out. And so I remember when I first read, I was thinking, I was like, okay, who is it? Who's going to be the big one that dies? And you sit there and you're going down, you're like, well, you don't want it to be Molly and Arthur. They're sort of like de facto parents to Harry, and Bill just got married and he's making his own life with Fleur, and we don't really see Charlie, but we assume he's doing something awesome with dragons in Romania. And you're like, if part of you's like, well, I mean, I wouldn't be too upset if it was Percy.
Right. Please let it be
And
Percy.
then
Please let it
shortly
be
before
Percy.
this, you get the reunion, you get him apologizing. You're like, oh, dang, okay, maybe not Percy. And then you're like, oh, there's no way it's going to be Fred and George. And then you're like, well, then it's only Ron and Ginny. Like, who's going to die? And unfortunately, it is Fred.
Yeah, I think like whenever there was the danger of Jenny with especially with Harry's hesitation of asking Jenny to come out of the room of requirement so that they could go in, you're like, but that's her protection. It's like I need you to take off this ring of absolute protection and shield for a second so I can do something. You're like, well, nothing great happens whenever you remove that protection. And so it was almost like a red herring of, oh God, Ginny's going to die, especially because they come out and I think Ginny's gone, right?
Yeah, they come out and well, right before they go in, Ginny's like, I'm gonna stand at this window with Tonks and we're just gonna start firing spells. Like we're just gonna start going. And Harry's like, remember, as soon as we come out, you go back in the room. And she's like, uh-huh, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And I mean, at that point, there was no way for her to go back in that room. The room of requirement is consumed by fiend fire.
Right.
So, but he comes back and her and Tonks are gone. And then, of course, all that happens. So she's now running around fighting. And we've lost Fred. Percy and Ron are still alive. And they're going down. Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Well, actually, Hermione turns to Harry and she's like, you need to find out where Voldemort is. Like, we need to know where he is in the battle. And so Harry is like, oh, well, that's easy. My scar's been on fire for hours. Let's go. So he looks and he finds out he is nowhere near the battle. He is in the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade. And he's got the snake with him. So he's not even fighting.
And Lucius Malfoy is there
Yeah, he's
begging,
like begging for him to
stop the
let someone
fight.
go get the boy so they can find their son.
Yeah, not that he's like, please stop the battle. My son's in the school. He's going to die. And Voldemort's like, I don't care.
Like he made his choice. Like
He made his choice to be a student. No, he didn't. No.
and so then we see immediately after this, we see a Death Eater's trying to go in and fire shots at Draco, and he's like, "Hey, no, I'm on your side. I'm Draco Malfoy," and
Ron, of all people,
saves him.
saves him from the Death Eater, and then
He's like, "This
punches
is the
Malfoy in the
second
face.
time tonight we've saved you."
And punches Malfoy in the face.
And I mean,
Was he
that
underneath
tracks.
the cloak at that time or no?
Yes, he was, because the Death Eaters are realizing that, oh, someone's underneath an invisibility cloak. And they know that the only person with an invisibility cloak is Harry. So Dean is actually like helping protect them. And then Ron goes and protects Malfoy. And they're able to keep moving through the crowd. So Harry is now trying to figure out, okay, well, the only way we know how to get into the Shrieking Shack is through the Whomping Willow.
I loved the comment that Ron was like, man, only if we had Crookshanks here. And Hermione's like, Ron, you're a freaking wizard, right? Like, don't you know how to use spells? He's like, oh yeah. So then he does Leviosa on a twig and touches the spot on the tree that causes the Whomping Willow to stop moving around.
Yes,
And then
but
they go down.
yeah, well, before that, we see it's one of my like favorite little things that happens, and that's Hermione blasts Finner Greyback off of Lavender Brown.
Oh
It
yeah,
says
she
that
died.
she's feebly moving. I sort of assume that she dies shortly after this.
Oh, yeah.
And then we see, so Hermione kind of stuns Finner Greyback away, and then suddenly this large crystal ball comes crashing down on his head. And it's Professor Trelawney from the floor above with this giant bag of crystal balls saying, I've got more for anybody who wants them, and just starts chucking them over the balcony.
You mentioning that just brought up something really cool. So if we go back to book 3 with the boggart and Lavender, I think it was Lavender asked, why is or so somebody asked, why is Lupin afraid of a crystal ball? When it was the moon. It was actually the moon and not a crystal ball. And then come back to this chapter where a werewolf is defeated by a crystal ball.
Yeah. Yep. And to me, it's just one of the funniest things where like Trelawney's like, I got a whole bag of these and I'm not afraid to use them. And just starts chucking them at people's heads. And I'm like, you know what? You go, Trelawney. But then they get to the Whomping Willow. This is after Hagrid is taken away by all the Acromantulas.
Yes.
Because he's trying to be Hagrid and tell everybody, don't hurt the spiders, don't hurt the spiders. And we're like, Hagrid, they are giant spiders that are eating people. We're gonna hurt the spiders.
And they just
they carry him away.
Now it mentioned, so this is weird because he ends up in the Forbidden Forest.
Yes.
With Voldemort. But from our interactions before with Aragog's children, they basically said no, any humans, any wizards, anybody that comes into our domain, Aragog essentially said, I can hold them back from Hagrid, but I can't hold them back from anybody else. And then once I'm gone, there's no holding them back from anybody. So I find it interesting that they kind of either willingly or unwillingly, I mean, it would have to be unwillingly, but how did, I mean, I know Voldemort has all sorts of dark magic that nobody's ever seen. So he could probably, Imperio Acromantulas and force them to do his bidding.
I think we see that they just kind of somehow drove them out of where they were. And they were probably like, hey, there's a bunch of tasty things to go eat at the castle. Why don't y'all go do that?
No, I get that. And I understood that because he just drove them out. Like if you think of like forest fires, it drives all the wilderness out, the wildlife out of that area. Or if I remember on Airline Highway, there was a section where they bulldozed all these trees, and then for the next month or two, the section of trees that was next to it, I saw all these like armadillos and other things that were outside of the tree line between the road and the tree scavenging it. I've never seen them before. And then after that month or two, I never saw them again. So they were driven out of their original homes and they had to fight for territory or whatever with what was left. So I get that driving out, but Hagrid was taken away by them. And then the next time we see Hagrid, he's roped up in a clearing, and it was the clearing. Like Harry noticed it was the clearing,
like it was Aragog's nest.
Where Aragog's nest was. So like somehow they brought Hagrid back to there, and I don't know if they just like went back because that was their base, and like Voldemort was still there, and Voldemort just killed the spiders and was like, "Oh, look, I got a nice little prize."
Probably. I mean, that's probably what happened. But then at this point, we really see, after Hagrid is whisked away, we see the giants really enter the battle. So Hagrid's taken away. Remember, Hagrid, as we discussed earlier, has to be about at least 10 to 11 feet tall.
Yeah.
So he's a big guy. And we see he's ejected back into the castle by Grop. Grop literally throws him back into the castle earlier on. And so we know Grop is somewhere on the grounds, but then Hermione and Ron see a full-size giant, like, just destroying things. And Ron's even like, hey, no, don't stun him, don't kill him. If he falls, he's taking down half the castle. So that sort of gives you the idea of how enormous these giants really are. Because then they look at Grop and they're like, oh, it's evident that Grop is a very small giant.
Oh, yeah. He is like 16, 17 feet. And I think the other ones are like 24, 25 feet at least tall.
But we see Grop yell Hagger, and he realizes that Hagrid's being taken away. And there is another giant in his way, so Grop starts fighting the full-grown giant to try to get to Hagrid. And it's sad, and I feel like we don't get to see enough of Grop because he's kind of a great character.
Yeah.
But he is.
And we don't even know what happens to him.
We see him a little bit more after this, but we don't see him at the very end. So we don't get a full what
We don't know
happened.
if he's dead or alive or.
Yeah.
I know they mentioned one in there that somebody looked back to look for Grop and they didn't see him. And I think that was the last I remember of hearing about him.
I feel like at one point, like during the ceasefire, I think like he's like looking in the windows or something.
Oh,
Like
maybe.
people see him outside the windows, but they're now actively trying to get to the Whomping Willow. They're trying to get to the Shrieking Shack. And Ron remembers that he's a wizard and stuns the tree. And they even point out, they were like, yeah, when we did this as third years, they were able to walk side by side through the tunnel. And they can't fit like that now. They have to walk one in front of the other.
That was what I was going to point out, which was really cool because it's like it harkens back to it. But I also remember, because like I mentioned before, Jules and I are listening to the audiobooks, and so we had recently finished few month or two ago. We finished the book 3, and just the scene, the imagery of Snape being pulled along through that tunnel and just banging his head was just like hilarious to me. But yeah, the fact that it is showing, she's showing growth. It's like, oh, they're getting smaller, and this was just a kind of a tighter tunnel to get through. So it was neat.
I don't know. And one thing, so Lucius Malfoy earlier, when Harry enters Voldemort's mind, Lucius is given the task to go find Snape. So they get through the Whomping Willow, they put the cloak on, and they realize that they're like behind a crate, like they're hidden. And they realize that Voldemort, Nagini, and Snape are all in there. And Snape is just trying to be like, okay, I'm not sure why you called me in here. Let me go find the boy. Let me deliver him to you. Let me go get him. If there's anybody who can find him, it's me. I know my way around that castle. I can get him. And Voldemort's just kind of ignoring him. He's like, y'all don't understand. Harry Potter's gonna come to me because he doesn't want to see the senseless fighting anymore. Like, y'all need to just stop trying to offer to go get him. And he's like, Severus, you're a remarkable wizard. You've been invaluable to me. But I understand now why this wand won't work for me. It's because I took it from Dumbledore, but you're the one who killed Dumbledore. So I have to kill you now in order to gain allegiance from this wand. And Snape's just like, what? No.
You
don't have to do that.
Right? Yeah, and Snape is really trying to not plead, like look weak, but he is obviously very concerned for his safety at this point.
Yes. And in a way, Voldemort himself still does not kill Snape. Because he just hovers Nagini's invisible cage over Snape and lets the snake kill him.
Right.
So Voldemort himself still doesn't kill Snape.
I was
But
expecting Harry to, at the end, even though he would have died, I mean, he died just being left to his condition. If Snape would have been like, Harry, you have to kill me. And then Harry was just like, took the memory and then just went junk. Oh, I killed Snape, who was the owner of the Elder Wand. Like, but later on, we do find out that Snape was never
the
an
master of the
inherited.
Elder Wand.
Yeah,
Yes.
he was never the master of the Elder Wand.
So we get Snape. Harry comes over. And even Harry's like, he doesn't know why he moves forward to go see Snape, the man who hated him. But Snape, he realizes, is crying, and then there's this silvery, like blue mist coming out of his eyes, and he recognizes it for what it is. He knows that it's memories. And so Hermione thrusts a vial into his hand, and he takes them and he gets them. And then you see the thing of Snape is looking up into Harry's eyes, which are Lily's eyes, and he dies. We get the death of Severus Snape.
The death of Severus Snape.
And then I feel like Harry's very conflicted at this point because he's like, I'm in the middle of a war. I now have these memories that are probably pretty important. The only place I know that has a pensieve is back up in the castle. Snape's dead. And then Voldemort comes over his own form of a loudspeaker and tells people, hey, here's a ceasefire. Collect your dead. Bury them with dignity. Heal your wounded. Harry Potter, you've got 1 hour to come meet me in the Forbidden Forest.
Yeah, this is where Harry's walking back towards, man, they make it back to Hogwarts very quickly, by the way, from Hogsmeade, yes, from the Shrieking Shack. And so that's one thing that I don't think Rowling does a great job of like how far Hogsmeade is from Hogwarts Castle. It's it's
and even still, Hogwarts is huge, and like they have to first get to the Whomping Willow, then get across the grounds, then get up to Dumbledore's office or the headmaster's office. It would have taken them a hot minute.
Yeah. And so as he's walking, though, he's just seeing all the carnage from the war. The people have died. He passes Tonks and Lupin's bodies.
He sees all the Weasleys huddled around Fred. And that's when Ron and Hermione kind of veer off and they go and be with their family. And Harry goes up to the headmaster's office. And he doesn't even think about it when the gargoyle asks for the password. He just says Dumbledore. And the gargoyle's like, I may have been the password, may not have been. The gargoyle's just like, here you go.
But this gargoyle wasn't this the gargoyle that was like broken up into pieces?
Is that now or is that later? No, that's later.
Okay.
That's later. Now he's still there. And so Harry gets up into the headmaster's office and he notices that all of the portraits are empty. All of the previous headmasters have like fled into other portraits to see what's going on. So Harry pulls out the pensieve and he views the memories. And this is where we get Snape's life.
Yes, this is a condensed version of the book that you wanted.
Yes. So we see Snape at the very beginning realizing that Lily Evans was a witch and meeting her. And we see Petunia very much so being like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, that's not normal. Like how kids do. And Petunia is very judgmental of Severus Snape because he's sort of ragged looking. He's from what we gather, he's fairly underweight. His clothes are really dirty.
He's creepy in a sense that he hides and watches them.
Yes, he's creepy. But then the next memory flashes over, and we see that at this point, Lily has gotten her Hogwarts letter, and her and Snape are spending more time together. Snape is sort of explaining Hogwarts and the wizarding world to Lily.
But even before that, though, there was a scene. So the first scene we got was Snape was spying on Lily and Petunia.
Yes.
Then, and I don't know, I don't remember if it swirled and re-scened or if this was just like a continuation and later that evening or whatever. But Petunia herself at one point was hiding behind some bushes, spying on Lily and Snape. Because like they were becoming friends because Lily was interested. She was like, Lily realized that she had special abilities and she was connecting with Snape on these special abilities because one, her sister didn't understand it, and her sister kind of, even though her sister and her were close, it was something that her sister Petunia, or Toonie as she called her, um, kind of made her feel an outcast for, right?
Yes.
So it's like, but to Lily, it was, this is part of who I am. And my sister, the closest person to me, doesn't understand this. But this guy over here, who is an outcast, he understands this. And I feel for him, but he also understands this. So they started getting closer.
Yes. And so
then it goes to
Snape's sort of telling Lily about the magical world and what she can expect at Hogwarts, and he sort of ends it by saying, "I hope you're sorted into Slytherin," which we know Muggleborns are not sorted into Slytherin, and it's very rare that Half-Bloods are. But we see that Snape obviously was the Half-Blood prince. And so he gets sorted into Slytherin. And on the train, it flashes forward to them on the platform. And we sort of get a little interesting bit of backstory about Petunia here.
Yes.
We find out that Petunia had tried to write to Dumbledore to be admitted to Hogwarts. Like, she wanted to go to. And that dramatically differs from what we see of Petunia interacting with Harry, where they go, "No, you're just a freak. Like, we don't want anything to do with that world." And we now sort of see that stems from Petunia's rejection from that world.
Yes, and we see that immediately whenever Lily is accepted. And then, like, Petunia didn't even tell anybody. Snape had found the letter and read it, and then he brought it up. And so then she was like embarrassed.
Yes. And so she immediately goes, "Why would I want to go to a school for freaks? That's what it is. You're going to a boarding school for freaks." And we now see that is how she treated Harry later on.
And I think I got the sense that she wrote Dumbledore to try to get into Hogwarts because she loves her sister and she wanted to be with her.
Yeah, right? She wanted to be with Lily. She also, I feel like, was a little bit jealous that Lily got these abilities and she didn't. Because Petunia was the older sister. I mean, not by much, by like, we kind of assume by about a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Which also leads me off about the casting in the movies, but because at that point, when we first meet Petunia, and Vernon, we're like, okay, they're probably in like their 40s. And at that point, they should have been 31, 32, 33. But
don't you know people in England age more quickly than people in America?
Especially when they only got like 40 actors and they just gotta work with what they got.
There's only 40 actors in England, all of it.
Yes, absolutely. We're not counting Maggie Smith, she's Scottish. Yes. But we
and she just won't die.
We're
I hope
not
she
even
doesn't
putting that
die.
out into the universe. Maggie Smith will live forever.
Yes.
So we see that Petunia has this instant click as soon as she gets embarrassed for being found out that she had written to the headmaster to try to go to Hogwarts. And she's like, nope, you're a freak. I don't want to talk about this anymore. And she goes back off to her parents. And so Lily is now feeling like, well, Lily is almost driven more to Snape because Petunia has been like, well, no, you're just a freak. And she's like, well, okay, well, Petunia definitely doesn't understand me now, but Severus does. So they get on the Hogwarts Express, and there they meet at least Sirius and James. And Lily doesn't like them because they're making fun of Snape. So Lily and Snape move to a different cart. Then we jump very frequently for a little bit in that we see
Sorting hat ceremony.
yes, Lily gets sorted into Gryffindor. She like turns her back on Sirius when she realizes that he's one of the boys from the train. Snape is sorted into Slytherin. We see them a little bit older, and Lily's sort of fussing at Snape, like, why are you like
And
hanging out with these guys?
I got the sense that was around their year 4.
Yes.
Because yeah, Snape and Lily were walking. Um so Snape has started hanging out with Mulciber and Avery, who we know are names in
Of
now
Death
of
Eaters.
Death Eaters. Um and so she doesn't approve of Snape's friends, and then Snape doesn't approve of her friends. Like, because of her house, she's friends with James and Lupin.
I don't seem to think that we're at this point that she's really friends with them. It's more so that she's like just around them more. Because even she's like, yeah, they're not great. Like I don't remember the exact word that she calls James Potter. But it's not a pleasant, flattering thing.
Right.
And so she's like, I'm around them because I'm in the same house with them. I'm not friends with them.
Yeah, yeah.
You are becoming very friendly with Mulciber and Avery. Did you see what they tried to do to Mary McDonald last week? And Harry's like, and Snape's like, oh, that was just a joke. And she's like, that's not a joke.
And then he brings up the fact that what James and them, the trick they played on him that almost killed him. He's like, but they did this to me. Oh, and by the way, I think Lupin's a werewolf.
And Hermione's like, not Hermione. Lily's just like, he's just sick. Leave him alone. So you see Lily, she's not friends with them, but she's defending them.
Right.
She's defending them to a certain point.
She sees certain good aspects in people.
Yes. And we see, or we kind of assume that I think Remus is the one that Lily sort of softens to first, because he's not quite the in your face, like obnoxious one that James and Sirius are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like she warms to Lupin first and then eventually winds up in their friend group. But from what I remember, she always feels that something's a little off with Pettigrew. She's like, she never fully trusts Peter Pettigrew, but James does because of all the stuff they go through together at Hogwarts.
Yeah, I can almost get the feeling right here, like when Lily defends James and his friends, she's defending them against Snape's just what's God, I'm trying to think of a word. Irrational dislike of them, right?
Yeah.
Like Snape has he started off with an irrational dislike of James and his friends. It's like they just I don't like they don't think I belong with them. I don't feel like I belong with them because they make me feel that way. but they're not necessarily just bad. It's just like, oh, well, everybody treats Snape like an outcast, so of course we are, and we're the popular ones, so we've got to let people know that, hey, no, he's not that cool. Whereas Lily is actually like, hey, there's a rational reason why I don't like your friends.
Yeah. So then we do another time jump.
Year 5, I think it is. Because they're taking the owl, they're preparing for their owl exams.
Yes.
And
we've seen this scene before. Harry jumps back and he's like, I've seen this scene before. I don't need to get close to this because it's the one he saw when he was able to invade Snape's mind in year 5. But he does see a little bit more of it. So Snape eventually is let down from the Levicorpus spell, and Lily's trying to like help him and comfort him, and she's like, I don't need help from a mudblood. And Lily's just like, and that's it. that's the end of that for me, and walks off.
Yep.
And we get another jump to probably either that night or the next night. Lily's in her dressing gown, and Snape is outside the door to Gryffindor Tower, and he's trying to apologize. He's pleading with her that he didn't mean it, that he would never call her that. And she's like, no,
says,
you did.
do
You
it all the
meant you.
time.
Yeah, you do it to people who aren't me but are the same as me. We're done. Like, don't talk to me again. I don't want to see you. So in a way, that action, that one slip up of Snape and calling her that word sort of pushes her towards James and Sirius and Remus and Peter. So then we get another time jump, and it's Snape begging for help from Dumbledore, and Dumbledore's like, why in the world should I help you? Like, what is Voldemort trying to get you to do this time? And we find out that Voldemort thinks that he needs to go after Lily Potter, and Dumbledore's like, okay, well then warn her. And she's like, I can't, you need to keep her safe. Like, just her, not her husband and her son. It seems like I don't care about them. And Dumbledore's like, you're disgusting. And Snape's like, then save them all.
No,
like
I think I think Dumbledore is actually more disgusted with Snape because he asked, like he asked Voldemort specifically, do whatever you want with anybody, but don't touch Lily. And so it was kind of like, okay, I mean, that's oddly just very specific and kind of
because Dumbledore's even like, well, why don't you just ask your master to not hurt her? And he's like, I did. I asked her not to hurt Lily. And Dumbledore's like, okay, so you asked her not to hurt Lily knowing that he's going after her newborn son. You're disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, why should I help you? And Dumbledore's like, then save them all. Then like protect all of them. If it means, if it's an all or one situation, protect them all. And then we see Dumbledore's like, okay, well, why should I? Like, what will you do for me? And that's how Dumbledore turns Snape into a double agent. Because Snape's like, I'll do anything. I will do anything to protect Lily Potter. And then we get another time jump. It's obviously the night that, or shortly after, Lily is
shortly after the First War, huh?
Yeah, or shortly. We definitely notice that it's, well, I mean, I guess the First War ends the night that the Potters die.
Yeah.
Technically, because Voldemort's gone. So Snape is like uncontrollably sobbing that Lily is dead. And Dumbledore's like, well, you should be glad the son survived. Like, her son is alive. Like, her legacy lives on. And Snape's like, I don't care. I don't care. She's dead. And Dumbledore's like, the best thing you can do to honor her is to help her son. And then Dumbledore leaves them leaves Harry with the Dursleys, and I'm like, okay, why? Once again, a reason why Dumbledore is a terrible person. Because we know that James Potter was a pureblood, and pretty much at that point, there's so few pureblood families, they're all married into each other. So I refuse to believe that there was not a close magical relative to James Potter that could not have taken Harry in.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Like, there was absolutely somebody who had married in to, because I think they realized that a few like generations back, like a Black married a Potter, like Sirius and James were like second or third cousins, or like maybe like third or fourth cousins. So I'm like, there was definitely magical family that Dumbledore could have left Harry with. And
Sure.
probably fairly close magical family. Like, they probably would have been either first or second cousins. But Dumbledore's like, no, let me go leave him with the family that's going to hate him. The family that, like, we know hates wizards. Let me go leave him with them.
Yeah.
And even McGonagall's like, are you sure? You sure you want to do this? And Dumbledore's like, yep, this is the closest family he's got. And we're like, rumble roar, what are you doing?
And so in here, I mean, he does tell, like, I mean, Snape promises to protect Harry, but also tells Dumbledore, please, like, you have to promise not to tell anybody about my soft side.
Pretty much, yeah.
And he's like, okay.
So then we get another time jump.
All the way to Harry's year
Sixth
one.
year. Oh no, year one?
Yeah, so there was a brief, so we get year one, year four. So we get a brief viewing in year one where Dumbledore just tells Snape to watch Quirrell.
Yep.
And then it jumps again to year four where Snape is reporting on Karkaroff fleeing, and that the dark mark
Is getting darker.
Is darker, and Karkaroff was afraid of it, and so he fled. And then we jump to year 6, where we finally find out about Dumbledore's hand.
Yes. Well, we had the suspicion that it was some sort of curse.
Right.
We didn't know what it was. And so Harry realizes it was from Gaunt's ring, the first Horcrux that Dumbledore had destroyed. Because he sees the ring and the sword of Gryffindor sitting on the desk together. And that's where we find out that Dumbledore asked Snape to kill him. Not then, but when the time is right, because he's only has about a year left with this curse. It will spread. It will get stronger with time. So Dumbledore knew he was dying. And he makes Snape promise that he will kill him at the right moment.
Yeah, and so here's something interesting. So one, the ring, Dumbledore, we find this out, I think, in chapter
King's Cross
35.
Station, yeah.
Where the ring had the stone in it, and Dumbledore thought he could use the stone, and that's why he put the ring on after. But he thought the curse would be destroyed once he destroyed the Horcrux.
Nope.
And that was false. But here he's telling Dumbledore, after all this is going on, he tells Dumbledore's like, all right, there's going to be a time where Voldemort is going to keep Nagini close to him at all times and protect Nagini. And that is when that you must do these things when that starts to happen.
Yes. So, and eventually, I mean, Snape, he realizes, because he's like, well, Draco's been tasked with murdering you. So obviously this is right before he makes the unbreakable vow with Narcissa Malfoy. So he makes that vow at the beginning of book 6 with Narcissa Malfoy, that if Draco should fail, he will kill Dumbledore, knowing that he was going to kill Dumbledore anyway.
Yes.
So he is like, okay, why would you have me tarnish my soul further? And he's like, is it really murder to kill a man who's going to die? To provide me with a quick, painless death? So Dumbledore kind of manipulates Snape into it. Snape doesn't want to. And then Dumbledore drops the bomb on Snape that once Nagini is not leaving Voldemort's side, Harry has to die. And Snape is just furious. He's like, you've raised him as a pig for slaughter. You've let him become his own individual person just to keep him alive, to kill him at the right time. Like, you're essentially, he's like, you are terrible. Why in the world are we following you? And Dumbledore is pretty much like, yeah, he needs to die at the right time. Like, that's why I did all this. And we're like, Dumbledore, you're a terrible person. So, and Dumbledore's like, well, I mean, you don't like the boy. Like, why are you so upset about this? And Snape reveals his Patronus, which is the doe, which is significant because that was the Patronus that led them to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get the iconic, after all this time, always. It's always been Lily. Because that was the same Patronus that Lily Potter had.
Right.
So then we do another time jump. Dumbledore's dead. Snape is talking to Dumbledore's portrait. And we find out that Snape had been holding on to the real sword of Gryffindor. Dumbledore's like, you have to hide it. You cannot let them think it was you. You can't let anybody see you. And Snape's like, I know, I understand. So at
But
the
he
same
doesn't know
time,
why. He doesn't know
yeah,
why Harry needs to have it.
he doesn't know why Harry needs to have it, but he's like, he's still doing Dumbledore's bidding after Dumbledore's dead. He is talking to a portrait and still doing his bidding. But so Snape is able to successfully get the Sword of Gryffindor to Harry and Ron so they can start destroying the Horcruxes. And we find out that Harry has to die because a piece of Voldemort's soul rebounded and lives in him. Harry himself is a Horcrux. That's why he has that connection to Voldemort. That's why he can speak Parseltongue. And to me, I said in the first book, or in the first few chapters, that there was a theory about the Dursleys and Harry because of this. This is what it was, is that we find out that Harry is a Horcrux. And we've seen with the Locket Horcrux that the closer proximity you are to these Horcruxes, the more irrationally angry you get and the quick tempers you have. So the Dursleys were exposed to a Horcrux for 11 years. And so there's a theory that they treat Harry so terribly because they have been influenced by the Horcrux that lives in Harry.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's an interesting theory. I mean, we see that Petunia is like defensively mean about it. It's because she's hurt herself. But I mean, they just get cruel at a certain point with Harry in the beginning. So there's the theory that it's because Harry was a Horcrux and they were so exposed to it that it made them crueler.
That's interesting. Well, yeah. Then the rest of the chapter we've got. This is all in year 7 for Harry's year 7. Snape. It's showing Snape meeting up with Mundungus and telling Mundungus that, hey, you're going to use Polyjuice Potion. This is what's going to happen. And then he like confunds him. So he doesn't remember. Like, he basically does an Inception. Hey, this was your idea. And so that's, and then it shows, he let's see. He was actually wait. Okay, Harry was flying alongside Snape on a broomstick. So this is Harry in the memory. So Snape was flying on a broomstick in the night whenever they were getting Harry out. He was accompanied by hooded Death Eaters, and ahead were Lupin and a Harry who was really George. So Lupin and George are there, and then a Death Eater moved ahead of Snape and raised his wand. Snape cast Septum Sempra, which was intended for the Death Eater's wand hand, but missed and then hit George instead. So that's how George got the
Lost
scar on
green
his
hair.
face, and it was an accident. And so
Well, because
then,
Dumbledore said, remember, you have to make it convincing that you're a Death Eater, that you're like going after these Harrys.
yes, but he really did want to hit the Death Eater.
Yes,
I
but I
think.
mean, him missing and hitting one of the Harrys was more convincing to the Death Eaters. That
Yes,
like, hey, he's really firing spells to hurt or to like to maim, because they weren't supposed to kill Harry. But so yeah, we see all this wrap up, and we just get sort of how Snape was manipulated by his circumstances and pretty much went to anybody that would accept him. Like he gravitates toward Lily because Lily accepts him for who he is, and then he gravitates toward the Death Eaters because they accept him for who he is, and then becomes indebted and manipulated by Dumbledore for decades.
we get one more memory though.
Oh yeah.
The Snape, the one right before Harry and Hermione and them go back to House Black. And so we find out that Snape was the one that trashed the room.
Yes.
And he took the second page of the letter that Lily wrote to Sirius, and it had Lily's signature on it. But we get the end. So the letter back in chapter 13 or something, it was early on. I forget which chapter.
Yeah.
But anyway, the end of that letter, it said, "Can it really be true that Dumbledore?" And then now we see the second page, which ends up with, "Could ever have been friends with Gellert Grindelwald." I think her, and this is talking about Bathilda telling her this, and she goes, "I think Bathilda's mind's going personally," and which we kind of see there. Okay, maybe her mind, Bathilda's mind, wasn't actually gone.
Sure, her filter was just gone.
Yes, because we know from Dumbledore that he was friends with Grindelwald.
Yes. And so
But
Snape also rips the picture in half so he can keep the picture of Lily laughing.
yes,
So we do see, unfortunately, the great unrequited love story of Severus Snape. And then we get finally Harry pops back up, and he understands what he has to do now. He understands what's been building.
I was just looking through right after the letter here. It goes back to, it jumps ahead again now, where he's in the headmaster's office, and it's right before the beginning. Like, we're catching up now to right where we were before Snape ran off, right? And he's in the headmaster's study, and Phineas comes in and saying, "Oh wait, no. This is earlier on. Sorry, this is way earlier on when
This is where he drops off the sword of Gryffindor.
yes. But Phineas comes in to say they're camping in the forest of Dean and calls Hermione a mudblood, at which point Snape goes, "Do not use that word."
Yes.
So,
And to Snape's credit, we see, I mean, he has obviously a lot of disdain for Hermione throughout the series, but we never see him use that word.
right.
Like that stuck with him. He used it on Lily and she completely dropped him after that, and that stuck with him. So he doesn't use that word anymore.
All right, so let's see. And of course, then the sword. And then Snape goes, let's see. He will know what to do with it. Be very careful. They might not take kindly to your appearance after George Weasley's mishap. And he says, don't worry, I have a plan. And that's when Harry came back out and then feels like, oh, Harry in his mind, he's like, he last saw in the last memory, at the end of the last memory, Snape left the room. And so when he comes out of the memory, he's like, oh, it's almost as if Snape might have just closed that door because he knows Snape is dead now too. So before we move on to the next chapter, do you think Snape is a better person or Dumbledore is a better person?
Oh, between those two, it is absolutely no contest. Snape is a better person and who was highly manipulated by Dumbledore. You will never catch me defending Dumbledore. I think Dumbledore is terrible. And I mean, from the not this chapter, but the next one, he admits that he's terrible.
Oh, yes, he does.
So it's Snape is definitely a better character. Snape's not a good character. He definitely is manipulated a lot, and he does a lot of things for vengeance. And he's just sort of he's not a good person. Like,
Is his actions like is his continued love of Lily, would you think that's kind of creepy or understandable?
I think it's desperate. I think it is him. I don't know if he truly loves Lily or if he's just desperate for that feeling of acceptance that Lily gave him. And because if you think about it, Lily is the first person that we see that just accepts him as he is. Like, no conditions, like, this is my friend, this is Severus, he understands me. Because even the Slytherins are like, I mean, you're a half-blood, but you're pretty cool. And the Death Eaters are like, you're really good for a half-blood.
Yeah.
Dumbledore is like, you're pretty good for a spy. Like, they all accept him conditionally. Like, they all have something over him. Whereas Lily's the one person who you see doesn't do that.
True. That's a
So,
good point.
so I think it's more so he is seeking that just unconditional acceptance that Lily gave him. And so, I mean, in his way, he does love her. And it's not his love for her that's creepy, it's his lack of ability to move on.
Yeah. No, I see that. A lesson learned from Dumbledore keeping too many secrets, where he's like, no, I need help and I have to trust somebody. And so he
Yes.
said, look, Neville, I'm entrusting you with this. If anything were to happen to me, Ron, and Hermione, you need to use this sword to kill Nagini, the snake that's on Voldemort. It needs to die. And Neville's like, you got it, boss.
Yep.
And then the other, um, apart from the end where Voldemort kills Harry, the other big thing in this chapter is Harry realizing Parseltongue will open the snitch and finding the ring inside. Obviously, he thought he knew, or they believed that the ring was inside, and so opening it up, he finds it. The stone is broken in half, so that the stone of the Deathly Hallow, I don't
The
even.
resurrection stone.
There you go. The resurrection stone is broken in half, but he kind of uses it, right? And
So it's got a crack down it. It's not like fully broken in half.
right. But he does use it, and like it's like all these memory, like the dead show up, and the way it's described is they're like nearly solid memories. So they're not quite ghosts, but they're not corporeal.
Yeah, so it's more than like say in book 4 when we have um the when they're in the graveyard and they're the ones when they
Last
have the
spells are coming
priori
out.
incantatum and they have those it's more corporeal than those like soul like spirit type wispy things that Harry sees in book 4 of his parents. But he
That,
describes it, it's definitely more solid than like the ghosts of
right.
Hogwarts. But he can tell they're not quite fully there. Like there's something off.
Yeah, and they're encouraging him. So with those the ghosts that show up, he says, James, Sirius, Lupin, and Lily. And their presence was his courage, and the reason he was able to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So like Harry's walking, doing his death march. He's walking to his death.
Yes, but it's an important thing, he has accepted it. It's not to say he's not scared, but he's accepted that this is what has to happen.
Yes, he has become Jesus. He is having his Jesus moment here.
Yes, and he realizes as their other Death Eaters are around that he's the only one who can see these spirits with him. And he gets to the chance to talk to him. His parents tell him how proud they are of him, and he apologizes to Lupin that all this had to happen right when he had his son. And Lupin's like, no, he'll know what his parents died for. And so that's once again you see that mirror of Teddy Lupin and Harry, and they both lost their parents the same way for the same reason. But there is much more hope for Teddy than there was for Harry. And Snape and Sirius is just kind of like, he asked Sirius, like, it doesn't hurt. And he's like, nope, it's quicker and easier than falling asleep. So he's sort of, Sirius is trying to be like, you'll be okay. Like, it's so fast. Like, it's all gonna be okay. And they stay with him. He asks them, will you stay with me? And they go until the end. So they're walking with him, and shortly before he enters into Aragog's former lair that the Death Eaters have taken over, he drops the stone.
Where it stays, or
Yes, he
until
drops the
somebody decides
stone.
to write a story.
He drops the stone into the floor of the Forbidden Forest, surely to be trampled into nothingness by a centaur later. And he walks in. He's still under the cloak, so Voldemort at first is like, I guess I misjudged him. I guess I called this wrong. He didn't show. Like, and then Harry pops out. He's like, nah, I did.
I'm here. Kill me.
Yep. And there's not too much preamble about it. There's not a whole, let me reveal my diabolical plan while I wait to kill you. It's more so Voldemort's like, oh, good job. Avada Kedavra.
Well, of course, there's not a big monologue about his diabolical plan because Harry doesn't have a plan to kill him himself that he needs him to talk to.
Yeah.
Harry needs to die. So it's like, okay, boom.
Yep, and Harry is described, the last thing he notices is a flash of green coming at him. He doesn't feel anything. And then that brings us to chapter 35.
Yeah, which Rowling uses that, just the description of a flash of green. She uses that a lot just to signify that Avada Kedavra curse has been used.
Yes.
as opposed to just stating, "Oh, Avada Kedavra was said." It's just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, the room fills with green." You're like, "Okay, somebody died."
Yes, because it's very well established that the only green spell are or the only green curses are the unforgivables. So you're like, okay, either somebody is being really, really tortured or somebody's dead. But we have Harry dying and waking up at the start of the next chapter in what he describes as just a big, white, misty room. And
Which
he
he later
realizes
finds out.
is his version, or at least his mind's version of King's Cross Station. And he realizes before he wakes up, he's like, why am I naked? And he hears like this kind of like groaning and whimpering. So he wakes up, he sort of wishes for some clothes and they appear, so he gets dressed and he sees this thing just groaning and whimpering in pain. And he's concerned, but then Dumbledore appears and it's like, don't worry about that. Come here.
Yeah, I found this conversation to be so boring.
It
Like,
is, especially because by this point, if you don't already hate Dumbledore, what have you been doing? And Dumbledore pretty much says, he's like, no, you found out. You know all about my terrible past now. You like I did it. I know that. Uh I knew how much power corrupted me. Like that's why I wouldn't let myself be Minister of Magic. And we do find out a couple of little tidbits. Like we find out that apparently, like right after Ariana's killed, he's offered the Minister of Magic position. Like, and he
yeah,
puts it down. Um, and so he himself says that power corrupts me too much, and I sought the Deathly Hallows for their power. I was not the person to own them. I was not the person who was worthy enough to own them.
and he compares that obsession um, with the Hallows being similar to Voldemort's obsession with the Horcruxes.
Yes, and Harry kind of has to step in. He's like, similar obsession, but you did it the less harmful way. Harry's sort of telling him like, oh well, don't be so hard on yourself, and I, the reader, am saying, shut up, Harry. Let him be hard on himself. Um, but because they have the moment of Hallows, not Horcruxes. Like you tried to be the master of death through objects that already existed. He tried to be the master of death through death.
Yeah,
But
I was
even
gonna
still,
say, I was about to say, and Dumbledore did it without requiring death, but no, he there were times, I mean, including Harry. So Dumbledore had to die, Snape had to die, and
Harry had
Harry
to
had to
die.
die.
His sister died. His
His
parents
sister
died.
died. Yeah.
Um, numerous people in the first Wizarding War, including Lily and James Potter, Cedric Diggory. I mean, Sirius Black. Like Dumbledore has a pretty high body count of all the people he allowed to die. Just saying.
Yeah.
But Harry is still sort of not wanting to let that hero worship fully go. And even Dumbledore's like, no, I'm kind of terrible. Like you shouldn't worship me. Which is one of the first legitimately logical things he has said the entire book. But so we get that Harry realizes that Voldemort had to be the one to kill him, and that the prophecy wasn't as straightforward as he believed, and that Dumbledore's greatest flaw in his new form was that he took Harry's blood to reanimate himself, thereby putting Lily's protection for Harry into Voldemort himself. So Voldemort, no matter what wand he used, nothing until the Horcrux inside of Harry was killed, could harm Harry. And Harry is trying to figure out, Harry has this moment after he asks Dumbledore, is like, well, do I have to go back? And Dumbledore's like, well, I guess if you don't want to, you could always board a train. But essentially saying, I don't think that's what you need to do. I think you need to go back. And so Harry has almost that little moment of, do I really want to go back? Like, it's so peaceful and calm here. Like,
he could have just let the whole world just be destroyed by not.
He's like, it won't be my problem anymore.
I died for them. They can kill him now. Like,
yeah.
Like, so a few other things we can touch on here. So Dumbledore, he decides to have a pity party where he's explaining his relationship with Grindelwald.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I let all this go here.
And we find out that it's actually their like close friendship and everything that happened was only within like 2 months. Like, it was super fast.
But it was this idea of the Deathly Hallows that really brought him like to the to Grindelwald. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what really connected them, was this power over death. And I mean, you do see Albus at that point. He's probably a little bit vulnerable. He's like, oh, if I have the power over death, then maybe I could like bring my mom back or something. Like, he's in the situation taking care of his siblings that he doesn't want to be in because both of his parents died.
Right. And
he's like, if I can master death, I can reverse this.
That really, I mean, that connects back to Harry, where Harry wishes his parents were alive. He's jealous of Ron because Ron still has his parents. They also she also connects back to book 1 with the Mirror of Erised, where Harry finally realizes, I think it was mentioned
about the sock thing.
Yeah, he was lying about the sock thing, and like the thing that Dumbledore saw in the mirror was most likely his mom and his sister.
Yeah. So Dumbledore understood Harry's fascination with wanting to stay in front of the mirror and see his family.
Yes. Now, why did Dumbledore say a sock? I don't know. That might be some humor in Dumbledore's mind that we just never understood.
Possibly.
But I mean, she did explain a lot of other things, like, when he made the joke about, sometimes you just need a room that has a toilet in it. And we learned that the room of requirement was that for Dumbledore at one point.
Yeah. It's almost in a way of, because so remember I said that the author knew how the story was going to end when she was writing the first few books. That was especially true of Snape's character. Like, she knew exactly what was going to happen to Snape. In fact, she told Alan Rickman when they were filming the first movie how Snape's character is and what he does and like how he ends up. So Alan Rickman would actually like argue with the directors when they would try to have him do something a certain way. He'd be like, no, I can't. That doesn't fit with what I know.
That's interesting, but also I might be annoyed if I knew what happened with this character.
And the only person that knew what happened with their character was Alan Rickman. And that's because, I mean, if they had just played Snape as this big bully this whole time, you wouldn't have understood it at the end. So she didn't tell any of the directors, because the directors change like every other movie. she just told Alan Rickman, so Alan Rickman would fight back and be like, no, I have to do it this way. This is the only way it will make sense in the end.
I like that.
So that was, I feel like, once again, love Alan Rickman. And that he was probably one of the only actors on that set besides like Maggie Smith who could have gotten away with that.
I would agree. Yeah, I'm trying to think because most of the other ones don't stick around for long.
But yeah, I mean, like Maggie Smith could have gotten away with something like that, or Michael Gambon, who played Dumbledore. But as far as knowing what's going to happen to his character and playing it accordingly when no one else knows, that was a purely Alan Rickman genius move there.
I wonder who Alan Rickman told though.
I can look it up. I have the published Alan Rickman's diaries. I can check.
How is that?
I've read the first few chapters of it. It's actually really good. It's very fascinating. It's a good read. When I'm done with it, I'll pass it on so you can read it if you would like, because it's actually pretty fascinating, because it's not just him through Harry Potter. It's like it starts like a decade before Harry Potter and goes up to like a month or two before his death.
Okay.
So
and
he
how
goes through a
big
lot
are
of
those
other
sections?
It varies. It varies on different times because it's not like full chapters. It's more like broken up into sections of like years, I guess. So it just depends really on what was going on at the time. And I mean, obviously some little things have been taken out for the sake of his privacy, but it's a very insightful read.
Okay. Yeah, I may have told you in addition to reading for the podcast, I'm usually reading something for leisure, and then I also have yet another book that I read daily portion, an entry or an excerpt of it, whether it be an entire chapter. Kind of depends on how that specific book is broken up into. I'm not going to sit there and read a 60-page excerpt each day, but if it's like 5 to 10, 15 pages, that's kind of, and I try to keep it nonfiction. Sometimes, either something that's going to make me think about my life and improving and stuff. Uh, so might be the next one or a couple down the road. So I'll keep that in mind. But
another thing that we do see in this chapter is that Dumbledore is able to confirm to Harry, oh yeah, you're definitely descended from Ignotus Parable. The cloak passed from father to son, mother to daughter. It's always been kept in that family line. So yes, you are directly descended from one of the Peverell brothers, one of the original masters of death. So Harry had been sort of, I don't know if he had been really suspecting it, but he was always kind of been like, well, wait, how, if the cloak passes from father's side, how did I get it? How did my dad get it? Like, what? Once again, Harry has that moment of he's really bright at some points, and in other points it just goes straight over his head.
Yeah.
But he has the moment of, he tells Dumbledore, he's like, well, I mean, you had the cloak the night my parents died. And Dumbledore's like, yes, I did. I wanted to examine it. I had given up on my hunt for the Hallows many years ago, but to be able to examine another one was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And Harry has to think for a moment. He's like, having the cloak wouldn't have helped them when Voldemort came anyway.
Voldemort already knew where they were.
Yeah, he's like, having the cloak wouldn't have saved them. Which I guess you could say that was probably something that weighed on Dumbledore a little bit. Like maybe Lily and Harry could have gotten out if they had the cloak or something. But he's like, no, if Voldemort was already there, they wouldn't have saved them. But so he has the sort of heart to heart, and he kind of tells Harry all the reasons for the things that he's done and how he got to where he was. And eventually Dumbledore's like, convinces him, you need to go back, you need to finish this and live your life. And we get two of the most, to me, most iconic Dumbledore quotes in this chapter. We get the do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all, those who live without love, is the first one we get in this chapter. And then just the next page, we get Harry asks Dumbledore one last thing. Is any of this real? Or has this all been happening inside my head? And Dumbledore replies, of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. But why on earth should that mean it's not real? To me, I mean, once again, I don't like Dumbledore. He does have some great quotes, though.
Yes. Especially when I would like to say a few words. And he says weird words.
Yep. But Harry, at that point, decides, okay, I guess I'm going to go wake up. And we get to the last chapter, chapter 36.
Yes, we do. And this one's the flaw in the plan. And so that refers to using Harry's blood.
Yes.
In book 4.
Yes.
When he brings Voldemort brings himself back.
It refers to that, and it also refers to Voldemort not realizing that a piece of his own soul was in Harry this whole time. But so yes, Harry wakes up on the floor of the Forbidden Forest, trying to keep absolutely still. But he cracks his eyes open, he says like a millimeter, to kind of see what's happening. And he realizes that Voldemort is also on the ground. Like, his followers are trying to help him up, and they're hovering about him until he's like, enough, get away from me. I don't need any of your help. Which scares off everybody except Bellatrix. And so Harry's realizing that with Voldemort shooting the killing curse at him, it killed not only the Horcrux in him, but it severed like their tie. So it essentially, that spell attacked the very blood running through Voldemort's veins and knocked him out as well.
Makes sense.
So he gets up and he kind of, Voldemort comes to his feet. He sends somebody to go check to make sure that the boy is really dead. And that person
sends Narcissa.
It's Narcissa. Narcissa Malfoy, who was not okay with anything that was happening and just wanted her son to get out of this alive. So she realizes that Harry's still alive. And
she whispers, is Malfoy still at the school?
Is Draco still in the school? And Harry is able to communicate, yes. Yes, he's still there. Last I saw, he was still alive. I mean, he only says yes, but he's like, he knows last he saw Malfoy, he was still alive. He's not lying. And we really see at this point the power that Narcissa Black Malfoy has. She's a very powerful witch. In that she is able, I mean, Voldemort is this very, very skilled legitimate. He can read anybody's mind around him. He can sense deceit and if someone's lying to him. And Narcissa Malfoy is able to lie to his face.
I didn't even pick up on that.
She's able to lie to his face and convince him, nope, this child is dead. Which we see that as, because in book 6, when Snape is pulling Draco away from Slughorn's party, he's kind of asking him, like, Snape makes a comment on that oh, I guess your Aunt Bellatrix is working on your occlumency with you. Like because he's able to keep Snape out of his mind. And we realize, I mean, it may have partially been Bellatrix, but also his mom. His mom is going to also naturally be a very skilled occlumens and be able to block her mind. And she'd have to be in order to keep her real thoughts on this situation from Lord Voldemort as he's living in her house. And at this very crucial moment, to be able to block what I'm sure is her anxiety for Draco, her probably anxiety to lie to him and get caught, and what that could mean for her and Draco. She doesn't care what's going on with Lucius anymore. She's like, screw you. I'm only worrying about my son right now. And so she's able to stand up and lie to Lord Voldemort and get away with it. So she is a very powerful witch in her own right.
Yes.
And so then he's like, Voldemort's like, okay, great, he's dead. Let's go show everybody that he's dead and that they need to bow to me now. Their leader is gone. And so he
makes Hagrid carry the body
him
because he's so tall. He says, hey, don't you think if you carry him, people will be able to see it?
Yeah. But also, that's in a way that's a blessing for Harry, because Hagrid this entire time is just sobbing. He's like jostling Harry enough around that if Harry breathes, it's not as noticeable. So in a way, that's a blessing for Harry, that he's not being like held by somebody else or levitated, because they'd be able to see him breathing still.
Yeah. So it's not here. It's when he brings him in front of everybody that he actually like crucios his body, right?
Is it?
I want to say
I think it's before Hagrid picks him up. He's like, Harry like braces for it. He's like, of course Voldemort will want to humiliate his corpse one more time.
In front of the Death Eaters?
I think
it was
so.
just in front of the Death Eaters and not in front
I'm
of.
pretty sure it was just in front of the Death Eaters.
Okay, yeah. That had to take a lot of like self-control on Harry's part to just be like, oh god, this is painful, but I'm not gonna move.
Well, no, he says that he's flipped around and everything, but he doesn't feel any pain. Like when it happens, he's like, he just focuses on keeping himself completely limp, but he's not actually in pain. But he's being like flung around. But so I don't know what sort of protection he's got right now, but
yeah, that's bizarre.
It might be. No, wait, we do know what the protection is. As we find out in a little bit, it's that Voldemort now believes he is the master of the Elder Wand.
Oh, yeah.
He's not. Harry is the true master of the Elder Wand, so the wand is refusing to hurt him.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So,
that's true.
Yeah, he's being flopped around, but he's not being hurt. So Hagrid picks him up, and then on their way out of the forest...
That could also be the flaw in the plan as well.
True. There's several things. Voldemort did not have a great plan in this. Like, there's many flaws.
Yeah.
So they're walking out, and Hagrid sees all of the creatures start lining up, and he sees the centaurs, who apparently refuse to fight. And Hagrid's yelling at him. He's mad. He's yelling and was like, are you happy you didn't fight now? Are you happy that Harry Potter's dead? And he's yelling at all the creatures in the forest. In a way, Hagrid feels very betrayed by that. He spent years like cultivating good relationships with the creatures of the forest and treating them with respect and kindness, and they all either fought for evil or chose not to fight at the last minute. And Hagrid feels very betrayed by that.
He does, and he should.
Yes. So they make it out. They make it to the front of the castle grounds, and apparently the first three that spot him are Ron, Hermione, and McGonagall. And so they're all crying out, and
McGonagall's wails. Yes.
I mean, you don't think when you picture Dame Maggie Smith of her wailing. It's a hard image to picture, and she doesn't in the movie. she's far too dignified for that.
Speaking about whaling, you'll find this funny. There's I think it was a Wheel of Time book, but I was listening to the audio book, and there's one. Sorry, I think Jules is cleaning up her room, and she likes to throw things in the closet, and the wall is shared here, so something just hit the wall. But anyway, there's a quote in the book where it says, "And suddenly a whale burst out in the hut." And so, like, it's a whale, like a cry, but if you're listening to an audiobook, and like I just remember when I heard it on the audiobook, I was like, "Boonk," and here's a whale inside the hut. And I'm like, like a giant blue whale. And I was just like, okay, that's a funny picture.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so
they all come out and they start seeing Harry, and Voldemort's trying to lord his victory over. He's like, Hagrid, put him at my feet where he belongs. And in this, Harry is able to, as he's being manipulated, sort of get his hand on the cloak that he still had in his pocket. So Harry's standing there, he's just laying there, he's waiting for his opportune moment. And Voldemort's going on, he's like, bow to me, no more magical blood needs to be spilt. There'll be places for you amongst my ranks. If you resist, you and your entire family will be killed. And Neville winds up stumbling forward. And he's being very defiant, and Voldemort's like, okay. And so he somehow summons the Sorting Hat from the rubble of the castle.
he puts it on Neville's head
And lights
and lights it on fire.
Yes. And so that's, as they're distracted by all that, that's when Harry's like, okay, yoink, flips the cloak onto himself, gets away, and everyone's like, where did Harry's body go? And then Neville's able to get the hat off, pull the sword of Gryffindor from it, which is a callback to the second book.
Yes, there's lots of callbacks.
Yeah, when Fawkes drops the hat at Harry's feet, as the basilisk is attacking him, and he pulls the sword of Gryffindor from there. And so Neville grabs the sword out of the hat and slices off Nagini's head. And Voldemort did not like that.
No.
So there's another all-out battle happening, and the order and all the students, they're being sort of pushed back into the Great Hall for this battle. So we see Harry's under the cloak for a lot of it, and he sees just everybody battling at different people. He sees like 3 people battling Voldemort. He sees 3 people battling Bellatrix, until Bellatrix aims a killing curse that goes right past Ginny's ear, and suddenly Molly Weasley goes full Mama Bear and has one of the most iconic lines of the book, and battles Bellatrix herself.
Yeah, she just goes, "Not my daughter, you bitch."
Yep.
It's in the book, so.
And so she battles Bellatrix with all the ferocity that Molly Weasley possesses. I mean, hey, if you've got 7 kids, you're a pretty fierce person at that point. So she offs Bellatrix, and
Yeah, I want to point out here, so it was Hermione, Ginny, and Luna that were all fighting Bellatrix.
yes.
And we know Hermione and Ginny are, and I mean Luna too, all 3 of them are good at hexes and jinxes.
Yes.
And so they're holding their own. Then Molly comes in and is just like, all right, I'm gonna show, I haven't showed off how badass a witch I am this entire series, but you don't mess with the mother.
Yeah.
And she comes in, and then meanwhile, Voldemort is fighting
McGonagall
and Slughorn.
Yeah.
So Slughorn joins the fight here. And we know, all right, McGonagall's very powerful.
Oh yeah. Kings was very
Slughorn
Slughorn.
was an Auror, right?
No, Slughorn wasn't an Auror.
I thought.
Slughorn was
I
a
mean, I know
potion
Moody was,
master.
but I thought
No,
Slughorn.
Slughorn wasn't an Auror. Slughorn, that would have been too much work for Slughorn.
Okay.
Slughorn was a potions master, and then he like left Hogwarts to kind of go do, I guess, some like contract work or like research. Pretty much he wasn't like steadily working anymore, and then he comes back to Hogwarts as a way to hide from the Death Eaters who are trying to hunt him down to get him to join their ranks.
Okay, but I mean, he was still pretty powerful.
Okay, extremely powerful.
And Kingsley is an
Very
Auror
powerful.
that's very powerful. So, like,
Yes.
it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But before all of that, one thing that I thought was unexpected and just very badass is Creature
Yes.
pops up with all of the house elves, and he's leading the house elves, and like he kind of
All of them have knives from the kitchen.
yes, and he's got Regulus Black's locket just bouncing on his chest, and he's like, "Fight for my master, defender of house elves, and fight the Dark Lord in the name of Regulus. Fight, fight."
It gives me sort of Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe flashbacks for Narnia and for Aslan.
Yes, and it was after this, right? Where yeah, I think it was after the battle where Ron said something about house elves, or was it before or was it after all of this?
No, before, right? He says that someone needs to warn the house elves, like we can't force them to fight for us.
Oh yeah, and then that's
when
when
Hermione kisses him a second time.
on the mouth.
Yes.
And she's like, oh my god, oh my
Yes.
god, is this the man I like?
And so Harry, but I don't know if they ever get to them, but apparently Creature rallies them and is like, we're gonna fight. And they literally said they're running around stabbing Death Eaters in the ankles.
And this really goes to show just how much so creatures change in attitude towards wizards is due to Harry's demeanor towards him after he realizes, oh, okay, he was always like, especially after Creature's tale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after he learned that Creature was used by Voldemort and all this horrible stuff was done to him, he's like, oh, okay, that's why Creature distrusts wizards.
Yes.
And it's just like, well, screw everybody and blah 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 blah. And once Harry knew that, he started changing the way he treated Creature, which endeared Creature to him and goes, okay, look, yes, you are you are the master of Grimmauld Place now.
Yeah.
You are my master. And so to see him like go, all right, well, I gotta lead off, and however way he found that Dobby died. I mean, I'm sure all the house elves would have known, been told. So, he kind of takes Dobby's place in leading the house elves into battle against the Dark Lord.
Yes, and so and also while everyone's battling, the centaurs burst in and start going after Death Eaters. So yes. I guess Hagrid kind of made them go, dang it. So they burst in, they start taking down Death Eaters. Other creatures from the forest start taking out people. So essentially, it's pretty much like the Order gets some reinforcements. They finally get their second wave of troops that come through and help them at the last minute. And so right after Molly is able to kill Bellatrix and Voldemort, that we see that Voldemort like has this moment of like panic that his last great lieutenant is killed. He has this moment of like panic and dread, and that's when Harry reveals himself and is like, no one else interfere. This has to be me and him. Like, everybody stop fighting. It's me or him. Not one of us has to come out of this.
And Voldemort starts talking. Like all great villains in the final battle, they just start, discourse.
Oh yeah, they have to. It's their ways. But eventually, and Harry's taunting him. Harry's calling him Riddle and Tom, and Voldemort's like, "You dare?" He's like, "Yeah, I dare. Like, you just killed me. I can call you whatever I want."
And I came back, right?
Yep. And Voldemort's like, "Accident and chance," and he's like, "Yeah, your accidents." And so eventually, they're able, like, Harry's taunting him, was like, "Snape wasn't yours. Snape was Dumbledore's. Dumbledore's finally defeated you." And then he tells him, "Your wand won't work because Snape was never the owner of the Elder Wand. The person who disarmed Dumbledore that night was Draco Malfoy. And then when I disarmed Draco at the manor and took his wand, I became the owner of the Elder Wand. That wand will never kill me."
Conspiracy theories much?
Yep. So Voldemort is eventually, at that point, he's so furious, he lets out his Avada Kedavra. Harry lets out his signature Expelliarmus, and it crashes in the middle. Harry's able to push back the spell, so Voldemort's spell rebounds onto himself, and because no more of his Horcruxes are left, Voldemort is killed.
Hooray!
Yes, which we see a very different portrayal of this in the book than versus the movie. In the movie, you kind of get he like shrinks in on himself and puffs into like just a bunch of confetti, pretty much like Voldemort confetti. But in the book, we have he's lying on the floor, a corpse, because they make sure to mention that they put his corpse in a completely different room than all of the other dead. They didn't want him in there with those who had fallen.
Who would?
Well, absolutely.
His Death Eaters? No, not even them.
Oh, they've rounded up the Death Eaters. The Death Eaters are trying to flee. They're rounding them up. They're like, "Nah, you're going to jail." We see he's now realizing that the sun is rising over the remains of the castle. He's kind of taking stock of who survived. He sees that Ron and Hermione are alive and the professors are alive, and he feels great sadness over Fred and Lupin and Tonks. And he does point out, he sees in like a corner, he sees the three Malfoys. Not really sure that they belong there, but not knowing where else to go. And they're just all huddled together, happy that they've all made it through and that Draco's alive. And Harry just is taking stock of everything for a minute.
Yeah, we don't really see much. Like a lot of books, there'll be, there will be more substance after the final battle, like maybe even a whole chapter where it's dealing with that right there, and then you'll get a time jump. Here we get like a page and a half or 2 pages. Yes. And it's just like segmented jumps in time where it's just like, all right, now they're over here. They left Hogwarts. They're all hanging out wherever, which I forgot where they went. Did they?
And then we do see. Oh, that's right. We do get another person identified that as having officially died, who obviously snuck back into the castle and fought because he was underage. We do find that Colin Creevey
Yes,
officially dies.
Poor Colin Creevey. That was uh that was that was in the other chapter, chapter 34.
Well, yes, but now it's not as chaotic. So they're starting to list it off. We see like they list Fred, Tonks, Lupin, Colin Creevey, and 50 others who had died fighting him. When you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, in a battle this size, those seem like fairly conservative numbers.
Yeah.
But of course, when it's people you know and love and you went to school with and you've grown with, it's devastating. Let's see. Actually, it's Luna who makes a distraction
Yeah,
for them to let them leave the Great Hall unnoticed.
Yeah, because she was like, she went up to us, she said, I'd want some peace and quiet if it were me, she said. I'd love some, he replied. She goes, you know what? I'll distract them all. Use your cloak. And he's like, okay. So like this whole time, like Luna, so like Luna is, I kind of feel that Luna is what Snape would have been if Snape never like took to Voldemort and the Death Eaters.
Yes, and I think that's planned. Like you sort of see Luna is the foil to Snape. They were outcast, they were mocked, and then but Luna is sort of like encouraged by her family and by those around her. She doesn't care what people say about her. Whereas Snape was obviously like very brought down by his family, brought down by others. He was very, very sensitive. So yeah, they're meant to foil each other because you see, oh, Luna is this very well-adjusted, wonderful, lovely person, and then versus Snape on the other side of that coin, who's like, oh wow, you're kind of terrible sometimes, aren't you?
Yeah. And then the last thing in this chapter is Harry has already resided that he's not going to, or decided, resigned or decided, one of those two words.
Either works in this situation.
Not resided though, right?
Resigned. He's
resigned or decided, but not resided.
Yes.
I combined the two together, but
yeah, that he doesn't want to be in possession of the Elder Wand.
But he uses it for one last thing because he thinks it does have the power to repair his wand. And that's the one he wants, and it does.
Yes.
It does repair.
He's going to put the Elder Wand back with Dumbledore, and if he dies a natural death, then the wand's power dies with him.
Yes. But he must not get into a duel with any other wizard.
Which is strange because canonically Harry then becomes an Auror. Like yes. he's hired to be an Auror, so he's constantly hunting down dark wizards.
So and I'm sure he lost some battles. So
yeah. So I mean, I don't know.
That's if we use the logic that he did with Malfoy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I mean, obviously the logic worked because Harry was able to overcome the Elder Wand with Draco Malfoy's wand. I wonder if Harry ever gave that back.
Malfoy's wand?
Yeah. Because, I mean, he had won the allegiance from it. So that wand followed him now. So, I mean, I assume Malfoy had to get a new wand.
Probably.
But so he's able to fix his own thing. And actually, they go up to... They're doing all this in the headmaster's office. This is where the gargoyle is knocked over, and he asks, like, can we go up? And the gargoyle's like, go on, I don't care. Like, go on.
It's like, sure.
And so they go up, and Dumbledore's sort of telling him that Dumbledore asks him, like, or Harry tells Dumbledore, that thing that was hidden in the snitch, I think I'm gonna leave it where it fell. And Dumbledore's like, did anyone know where it was? And Harry's like, no. So he's like, I'm gonna hold on to the cloak though, and pass that down. But
Yes.
he's like, the other two are going to be lost to time and not able to affect anyone again.
Yeah. So
it's sort of that same logic of Harry was worthy to be the master of death because he didn't want it. Sort of how in book 1 he was able to possess the Sorcerer's Stone because he didn't want to use it. So it's another sort of callback there.
that makes sense. I like that.
But
like
and
that
then
callback.
we see at that point he's like, he fixes everything, he has comes to, he's like, I really just want to go to sleep. I wonder if Creature will bring me a sandwich in my dorm room.
Oh, good.
And
Good old
then
Creature.
yeah, then we get the jump to 19 years later. And I mean, I feel like most people sort of know what happens in the epilogue. Harry married Ginny, Ron married Hermione. Harry and Ginny have 3 kids. We have James and then Albus and Lily. This is Albus's first year going to Hogwarts. So James is kind of teasing him like, oh, what if you were in Slytherin? And Albus is freaking out, and Harry's like, if you wind up in Slytherin, you're fine. We'll still love you.
Yeah.
You were named after a great person from Slytherin house.
Yeah. You're Albus Severus. So you're named after 2 of the headmasters.
Yes. And so eventually Albus like gets on the train, and they meet up with Ron and Hermione's kids, Rose and Hugo, and they're going on, or I think one of them is. I think one of them starting their first year as well. So they're all going on the train, and the mist clears for a moment, or the smoke clears for a moment, and they see Malfoy and his son on the platform. And
They don't tell us who Malfoy married, though.
so from the extra like supplemental stuff that comes out, we find out that it's not Pansy Parkinson. We find out that it is Astoria Greengrass, one of the Greengrass sisters.
The
And
green grass grows all around and around, and the green grass grows all around.
so it's actually Daphne was in their year. Astoria was a year younger than them. So he marries Astoria Greengrass. Supposedly the author came out and said that she did this because she based the character of Pansy Parkinson on all of her bullies in school. And so she didn't let her end up with Draco because she didn't want her to have a happily ever after.
But Draco's son is named Scorpius.
Yes.
Which is
Ron's immediately trying to be like, don't befriend him. Like, don't do it. And Hermione's like, she can befriend whoever she wants. Like she can befriend Scorpius Malfoy.
Let's not rehash our childhood.
Yes. And Draco kind of like locks eyes with Harry and like gives him a nod. So we get the assumption that they're not friends, but they've made their amends. They've let bygones be bygones. And they are able to have a much more civil relationship now. And so they get on the train, and everybody is kind of just on the platform waving them off. And then we get the very end of Ginny's like, hey, everyone's going to be fine. And he's like, yeah, I know he will.
Ron makes a joke that really, I think, pays a tribute to Fred and George here, where it says, so students were hanging from the windows nearest them. A great number of faces, both on the train and off, seemed to be turned toward Harry. Why are they all staring? Demanded Albus as he and Rose craned around to look at the other students. Don't let it worry you, said Ron. It's me. I'm extremely famous.
Which gives you the idea that Harry's kids have sort of been not brought up with really the knowledge of who Harry is and what he did. They sort of just raise them as normal kids. Obviously as they go to school, they find out. So like we get the sense that James knows, but Albus doesn't yet. Because obviously in the Wizarding world, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are very famous. But they're sort of just like, meh. It happened, let's move on. It's been almost 20 years.
Yeah. 20 years is a long time.
Yes.
It's almost half my life. Over half my life.
Yeah. But then we get, apparently, from what I've read, I don't know how true this is, but the final sentence was how she always planned to end the book. Those were the 3 words that the author planned to end the book on. And that was all was well.
Yeah.
So we get the sense of the Wizarding world is at peace. There's no more crazy things happening. It says his scar had not pained him in 19 years, so Voldemort was well and truly gone, and all was well.
Yeah, good story. It's fun. Fun books. Fun books. I enjoyed reading it again for my second time after however many years it's been, 14, 15, 16, something, 16 years maybe. Yeah, since whenever book 7 came out.
Yeah, I feel like the last time I read all of them through was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that was the last time I read all of them through. I know it was pre-COVID.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you, Emily, for ending off the Harry Potter books with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it was awesome having you and your extreme love and knowledge of the Wizarding world. Gives a unique perspective. I learned stuff. I'm sure others learned. So, yes, thank you. Thank Chris. Thank you, Chris, for handling book 6. Thank you, Justin, for handling book 5, and Mike for handling books 1 through 4. Sad that Mike had life happen with him and he had to stop doing the podcast. And, I'll probably have him on sometime in the future. And so we have finished Harry Potter. So next week, Justin and I believe, will be joined by a special guest, and we should be talking about Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere in a non-spoiler way, just as a precursor to Justin and I jumping into the Stormlight Archives, which is a huge series that interweaves with a whole lot of other books by Brandon Sanderson. So that will be really fun. Let me see here. I wonder if I can. I'll just pull it up on my phone. So I have a new design, a little poster for the podcast. And it's, if you're looking at while we're watching this on YouTube, it's kind of designed off of the Jaws poster. And the subtext is, so it's paperweights. The subtitle is "We're going to need a bigger book." And it's a podcast microphone in an ocean of blue underneath a pin that's floating on top. of the water. So I kind of like Jaws, and I kind of like that look and that idea, and we're going to need a bigger book. And so we are doing a bigger book. The first Stormlight Archives book, I think, clocks in at right at 1,050 or 1,080 pages. The fourth one is over 1,200 pages. So big books to come, and maybe you'll read along and join us listening with the podcast. So for anybody doing it, I hope y'all join us, because it's going to be really fun. I'm interested to see the things that Justin and I get into discussing with it. Now, Justin and I have read most of these already, but it'll be fun to revisit. There's so much information in these, way more information than the Harry Potter. And so we look forward to that. Like, comment, share. Visit our sponsor, Mudcat Whiskers, at mudcatwhiskers.com. Use code paperweights. And we shall see y'all next week. Thank you, Emily.
Thank y'all for having me. It was a great adventure.
Do you have any other closing words you want?
All is well.
That's a great way to end.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.